Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Coming up on today's show, Sir Keir Stammer has announced the biggest sustained rise in UK defence spending since the Cold War, cutting foreign aid to fund it. Following Thursday's crucial meeting with Donald Trump, observers are still wondering if this visit was enough to strengthen UK-US ties and meet NATO demands. And ahead of both the Nigerian International Energy Summit and International Energy Week in London this week, we sat down with Wale Tinubu, the Group Chief Executive Officer of Owando, for an exclusive conversation. With energy security and the global transition high on the agenda, what role does Nigeria play in shaping the industry's future? Then later, the recently held Motherland Forum brought Africa's diaspora and key stakeholders together for a landmark gathering, highlighting the immense potential of diaspora-led innovation and collaboration. The event saw the unveiling of the prestigious Mama Africa portrait, honouring Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, but its impact goes far beyond symbolism. With growing calls to turn Africa's brain drain into the brain gain, how can the diaspora play a more direct role in shaping Africa's economic trajectory? I sat down with Nduka Ndukeze, the CEO of the Motherland Hub, to unpack the forum's biggest takeaways and the next steps in fostering meaningful engagement between Africa and its global talent. But first, a London court has ruled that Nigeria LNG Limited, the nation's sole liquefied natural gas producer, must pay $380 million to Swiss companies Vitol and Glencore. The decision made Tuesday comes after NLNG failed to deliver 19 shipments of liquefied natural gas between 2020 and 2021. According to reports, NLNG had an agreement with Dubai-based Talvaras to supply these shipments, but they were never delivered. Since Talvaras had already sold the gas to Vitol and Glencore, the Swiss companies sued for losses. The court sided with them, ordering NLNG to pay $260 million to Vitol and $120 million to Glencore. The dispute happened during a chaotic period for the global energy market, with prices fluctuating due to COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war. NLNG has been accused of selling gas elsewhere for higher profits instead of honouring its contracts. There are growing fears that this ruling could hurt Nigeria's reputation as a trusted LNG supplier, especially as it seeks more foreign investment in its energy sector. NLNG says it's reviewing the decision, while its partners, Shell, Total Energies and Eni, are yet to comment. A detailed court ruling is expected soon. Elsewhere, Sir Keir Stammer travelled to Washington on Wednesday to meet with President Donald Trump for talks marking a crucial moment in US-UK relations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great honor. Today it's my privilege to welcome the Prime Minister of a very special place, the United Kingdom, to the White House. Prime Minister Stammer, you've been terrific in our discussions. You're a very tough negotiator, however. I'm not sure I like that, but that's okay. Very, very special person. The Prime Minister and I have gotten off to an outstanding start. The U.S. and U.K. have a special relationship, very special, really like no other, passed down through the centuries, and we're going to keep it that way. We're going to keep it very strong as it is. Very importantly, I was just notified by letter from King Charles that he's extended through the Prime Minister a historic second state visit to the United Kingdom. And that's a great honor because it's never happened before. One person has never been extended that honor, and I really do call it an honor, but it's not for me, it's for our country. It's respect for our country. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank King Charles. Thank you very much, and we accept. I don't know if the media is going to follow us. I have a feeling they might. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm pleased to say that the bust of one of the Prime Minister's greatest predecessors, Winston Churchill, is now back in the rightful place in the Oval Office, and we're very proud of it. Our meeting today and the various breakout sessions we had were tremendously productive. Most importantly, I provided the Prime Minister with an update on our efforts to end the bloody and horrible war in Ukraine with Russia, which would never have happened if I were president. That was not going to happen, I promise you that. After 3 years of hellacious conflict, approximately 1 million Ukrainians and Russians have been senselessly killed, but the number, I believe, is much higher than that. Countless schools, hospitals, towns, and beautiful ancient churches have been absolutely obliterated. To begin the process of ending this spiral of death, I had historic back-to-back calls with President Putin, very successful calls, I might add, and President Zelensky, and my team also spoke with the Secretary General of NATO on numerous occasions, and we're working very hard to get that war brought to an end. I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think it's moving along pretty rapidly. And I want to thank all of the people that are here that have been working on it. And we'll let you know what happens. It'll either be fairly soon or it won't be at all. In addition, this week I met with President Macron of France, as you know, and held talks with members of the G7. Tomorrow, the progress toward peace will continue when President Zelensky visits the White House. He'll be here tomorrow in the early part of the day, and we'll be signing a historic agreement that will make the United States a major partner in developing Ukraine's minerals and rare earths and oil and gases, and we have a great understanding. I think it's going to be great for Ukraine. We're going to be at the site, and we'll be digging. We'll be digging. Dig we must. A big utility in New York con us, and they used to have a sign, dig we must, and we will be digging. But much of the European aid to Ukraine has been sent in the form of loans for which they expect to be paid back, and we didn't have that honor under the Biden administration. He sent money, or just sent it, money after money after money, and never had any knowledge of ever seeing it back. Maybe $300 to $350 billion, but under the breakthrough agreement, very unusual, which everyone said was difficult to get, but it's really very good for Ukraine and very good for us. The American taxpayers will now effectively be reimbursed for the money and hundreds of billions of dollars poured into helping Ukraine defend itself, which by and of itself is a very worthy thing to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your leadership. This has been a very good and very productive visit. And with your family roots in Scotland and your close bond with His Majesty the King, it's good to know that the United Kingdom has a true friend in the Oval Office. And it was so good to see the bust of Winston Churchill back in its rightful place just a moment ago. But look, in a moment of real danger around the world, this relationship matters more than ever. We remain each other's first partner in defence, ready to come to the other's aid, to counter threats wherever and whenever they may arise. No two militaries are more intertwined than ours. No two countries have done more together to keep people safe. And in a few weeks, we mark VE Day, the 80th anniversary of victory in Europe. Britain and America fought side by side to make that happen. One of the greatest moments in our history. We stand side by side still today, and we're focused now on bringing an enduring end to the barbaric war in Ukraine. Mr. President, I welcome your deep and personal commitment to bring peace and to stop the killing. You've created a moment of tremendous opportunity to reach a historic peace deal, a deal that I think would be celebrated in Ukraine and around the world. That is the prize. But we have to get it right. There's a famous slogan in the United Kingdom from after the Second World War. That is that we have to win the peace. And that's what we must do now. because it can't be peace that rewards the aggressor or that gives encouragement to regimes like Iran. We agree history must be on the side of the peacemaker, not the invader.
As the Nigeria International Energy Summit wraps up in Abuja and International Energy Week concludes in London, global energy leaders are analysing the future of oil and gas in Africa's largest producer. The discussions come at a crucial time for Nigeria as it seeks to position itself as a key player in the evolving global energy landscape, while balancing energy security, investment and sustainability. In an exclusive interview with Owando Group Chief Executive Officer Wale Tinubu, he shared with me how indigenous oil firms are adapting to global energy demands.
I would advise our competitors and our friends, well, we're all collaborators now because we're all indigenous companies delivering into a market that, thank God for the fact that our production is in requirement by the rest of the world. So there's no competition amongst us, there's only a collaboration. And I expect to see a lot of the indigenous companies collaborate on shared resources, shared technology, shared personnel, and also shared platforms. Not just terminals and pipelines, but tanks, all sorts of things which we can do together to reduce costs, to enable us deal with the overall challenge of being efficient and financially buoyant as well as profitable. We're going to need all the help we can because we do need to raise a lot of money locally and internationally, and we do need to provide returns that are well above average to ensure that we are deemed to be a veritable investment, a choice investment for people to make. Well, truth of the matter is that I see this as a golden age for the indigenous practitioner. I feel that we've had 30 years of training for this Olympics, and I say 30 years because I've been involved in the oil sector at a golden, where we took baby steps. In other words, where the first sets of Nigerians, which I was among, lifted the first crude oil cargo and sold it abroad, lifted the first products cargo from a local refinery. It was always done by the foreigners. The foreigners built the refineries, the foreigners drilled the wells, the international oil companies did everything. And then the national oil company came and it was a joint venture partner. And then one by one, the indigenous oil companies birthed. We at Owando have always been pioneers in all the aspects of the industry. So we were pioneers when it came to the shipping of oil across the continent. We were pioneers when it came to the marketing of refined petroleum products. We were the first Nigerian company to own a major marketing company. Major marketing companies were owned by the Seven Sisters. So it was Shell, it was Chevron, it was Total. Owando was the first indigenous brand to own a major marketing company. And we ended up taking over Essos Downstream, which was Unipetrol, and ENIs, which was Ajib Marketing. And we did the same thing with our gas. We did the same thing in the midstream, and then now in the upstream. So I see ourselves as a well-trained, well-researched, practiced company to enjoy the benefits of having a level playing field to truly operate. And it's important for us as individuals, it's important to us as flag bearers, and that's how I see ourselves. I see ourselves as flag bearers for a nation, flag bearers for a generation, and flag bearers for a discipline which hitherto has always been foreign. So it's like our independence in the oil industry.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, the recently held Motherland Forum brought Africa's diaspora and key stakeholders together for a landmark gathering. I'll be catching up with Nduka Ndukeze, the CEO of the Motherland Hub, to talk about the future of the summit. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. As the Motherland Forum 2025 concluded at SOAS University in London, the event reaffirmed its role as a premier platform for Africa's global talent. With a focus on bridging the gap between the diaspora and the continent's economic future, the forum brought together leaders, entrepreneurs and policymakers to foster collaboration and innovation. Ndukeze, thank you so much for joining me in our makeshift studio today. And I think you kind of preempted this good weather. You're not wearing a coat, which is great because the sun is shining.
I mean, it's an amazing pleasure. The weather is shining for right now, so I hope we get through this interview.
Although it's still cold. The weather is a running theme on Channel's Business Global, but of course we are in the UK.
Yes,
Funny
indeed.
thing is, the last time I was speaking to your CFO, I believe,
My COO.
your COO.
Yes.
The weather wasn't as bright, but we had a really bright conversation in the
Yes,
build-up to the Motherland Summit, which
Yes,
was
indeed.
a roaring success. And we've just played some of the clips from some of the key players you had there, including, of course, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Yes.
Before we get into the substance, I want to know how you managed to convince the Director General of the World Trade Organization
Yes.
not only to come to SOAS, my old stomping ground,
Okay.
but during a time where, as we know, geopolitically, world trade is so fragmented. But of course, it was so important for her to speak to the youth and the diaspora. How did you put it off?
I think you've already said it, right? The particular time with the world trending to what seemed like fragmentation and the alignment with the WTO's agenda on re-globalization, particularly inclusive re-globalization.
What does that
Right?
mean?
It's essentially talking about how we need to diversify the world's supply chains to include economies that have traditionally been left out. And a lot of Africa has been left out, and we see the effect of that, especially with COVID-19 and all the economic shocks that followed that. But that then means that there is an even greater pull or greater call to action for people within the diaspora to take part in developing Africa's economies and creating value-added exports so that we can have more leverage on the global scale. And so it's really about aligning incentives with multiple stakeholders, especially when Motherland Hub has a vision as large as it does. So we really rely on the right partnerships with the right individuals. And so what we do have is alignment, and that's also what we got to see at the forum itself. You know, amazing enthusiasm from the youth that were involved and the different stakeholders.
So intellectual.
Yes, it was very interesting. We had a good collection of activities on the day, from debates from the likes of the Oxford Union to our partners with the Africa Centre. You know, a number of really interesting discussions from players within the African diaspora who are engaged in entrepreneurial work and other efforts across different sectors, from the creative economy to financial technology. We had the likes of Oge Elumelu, who, as I like to say, she, with her podcast, African Everywhere, really has the lens that will capture the transformation of Africa in this generation, especially as the diaspora would view that. So it was really, really interesting to see that. And I think it's essential that we have spaces where innovators from the diaspora who have access to world-leading education and technological development can gain access to people who are already on ground, right, who have a more intimate experience with local context and challenges.
Absolutely.
So, you know.
I think an intimate experience, but also breadth of experience and depth,
100%.
because at the moment, a lot of the youth conversations are around podcasts, not necessarily intellectual ones.
Yeah.
Most of them really are about gossip, aren't they? I don't want to mention some of the names.
There's a
We
bit
all
of
know
that.
the gossip.
There's a bit of that.
We both know the gossip. But I want to talk, and I spoke about this earlier in the year, well, late last year, with your brother, about the voice of the youth and where it sits at the moment. Because a couple of years ago, my goodness, Greta Thunberg was one of the most popular people in the world, and she was speaking about the climate emergency from a youth perspective. But then earlier this week, you know, BP announced that it's no longer, or it's going to be reducing its investment in renewable energy. and it didn't really make headline news. So I was just thinking, where is the youth voice at the moment? Where do you think the youth voice is? Do you still have influence over geopolitics, or are the likes of Trump's new 2.0 going to drown out the significance of these demands?
I think the first thing is to understand that when the political climate has changed and the conversation has shifted, it doesn't necessarily mean the youth are no longer speaking. It just means the conversation that the youth, they've changed as well, right? And especially when it comes to the renewable energy and with regards to Africa, what we really want is not just a green transition, we want a just transition, right? Which takes into fact that, Africa has much to gain from its resources, and we do understand the need for this transition with sustainable development, but we have to take into fact that we need a transition that enables us to get there in an economically sustainable way.
But do you think world leaders are listening to that? Not just specifically even the discussion about energy, but some of the discussions and the talking points that you had in your forum a couple of weeks ago. Do they resonate? Yes, you had some big names there, including Mr. Tony Elumelu, including Honourable Abike Dabiri-Erewa. But are they actually taking on these ideas? Are they going to be implemented into policy, or is it just another talking shop?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is world leaders, government, they aren't the only one who have a role to play. First and foremost, the diaspora has a role to play. Motherland Hub as a platform that operates across the triple helix of academia, government and private sector have a role to play, right? And we see it as essential to bring world leaders and public sector leaders so that we can take the diaspora's point of view into action when considering policy and creating digital infrastructure and innovative technologies that can better streamline and enable the diaspora to partake in African innovation. Because that's what Motherland Hub is here to do, right? Relying on world leaders for everything is idealism. Idealism is relying on sunshine, which is neither here nor there. And the world needs every moment, right? We can't wait for sunshine. And so we, anyway, with the platform that we had, we did get support. I think that was very clear. With the Director General of the World Trade Organization, the Afro-Exim Bank, who was our title sponsor, and their support was not just financial, it was foundational. And we're really excited. We have a number of innovative solutions that we're going to be working with them on to enable us take charge of digital economy to prove that talent productivity is no longer dependent on talent locality. In this day and age, we can utilize technology to streamline the ability for entrepreneurs and innovators in the diaspora who have really useful skills and expertise to take part in augmenting Africa's innovation ecosystem and creating Africa's distributed innovation ecosystem.
Well,
so that's what we're here to do.
It sounds promising. We're running out of time, Nambi. Talk to me about some of the key takeaways from the summit, what you hope to achieve over the coming months, how diaspora can join this conversation of geopolitical
yes, 100%.
fragmentation or coming together.
100%. So I'll talk about a few key takeaways and I'll talk about where we're going. One special moment, of course, I need to kind of re-highlight was our honoring, really an enshrining of the legacy of Director General of the World Trade Organization, right? So we commissioned a renowned young artist, Anthony Ifechukwu Azekwa, who's worked with the likes of Meta, as well as the National Council of Arts and Culture, and who actually stems from the same village as Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Ogwashuku, right, to paint the very first motherland animal portrait titled Mama Africa. And we saw it as an amazing opportunity to really set a standard for the diaspora in terms of role models who have achieved everything from both charting a path on a global level and showing global governance and leadership, whilst also maintaining it true to her roots and showing exceptional leadership in her responsibilities back home.
Wonderful. Ndukeze, absolute pleasure speaking with you. Congratulations.
Thank you
It
so
really
much.
was a success, and also a very important time to be gathering such amazing minds from the diaspora together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juliana. It's been a pleasure to be here and pleasure to have this amazing weather at this time.
Thank you. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.